start by asking about the cast, because I do
Yes.
believe when you were writing, you had particular actors in mind.
Well, I had Simon Russell Beale in mind for Beria, and I spoke to him very early on, and he was up for it, and he loved the script. So once you do that, you then start working out from that who would be the perfect foil for Simon. Okay, Steve Buscemi. You can't get two more different types of people, yeah? And then you think, right, great, we've got these two. We've got American, we've got British. We could do with more American voices. Jeffrey Tambor, great hero of mine. Another great hero, Michael Palin. Paul Whitehouse, who, you know, I've always rated as a fantastic actor, but has always done his own material, so good to get him in. And then, you know, I like seeing people like Rupert Friend, who is known as a kind of an American sniper in Homeland. It's great that he gets to do a great comic turn, and Andrea Riseborough, who's just like a chameleon in every film she does. She's so different, you know, and so it carries on, you know. It was like that. So it was like a kind of building up and assembling a kind of team bit by bit, really, so that you got the best mix of people and mix of acting traditions as well.
Your choice of accent, was that something that you wanted to bring to the table, or was that Armando?
Yeah, no, it wasn't on the script. I phoned Armando when I was sent the script, and first of all I said yes, in case he'd made a mistake and it was meant to go to Jason Statham. And then I said, by the way, can I ask you a question? We're not using Russian accents. He went, oh, no. And I said, good, can I play Yorkshire? And he went, why? And I said, he's blunt. Zhukov could say whatever he wanted to Stalin, say whatever he wants to anybody, and the bluntest people know Yorkshireman. He said, well, Steve's doing it Brooklyn, and Jeffrey Tambor's doing it effete Californian. Paul Whitehouse is obviously a Cockney. Do whatever you like if you think it works. And I'm glad he did, because I had no other way to play it. I read it and I heard Jeffrey Boycott or Brian Glover's voice in my head.
And is that something that's lovely for you as an actor, because you've got a director that actually trusts your instinct?
Yeah, well, also, if you thought it was a bad idea, it would stop me. Armando has this unerring sense of where the funny is and what the funny is, and he probably heard it too as soon as I said it. He was a very gentle director, but very sure of what it is he wants to do. So he'll come up and he'll just whisper something in someone's ear, or take them off and just change half a phrase somewhere, and it changes everything.
Working with Armando must be a dream.
It was, yeah. It is. I mean, yeah, it really has been. He's, where is he?
He's not here.
Oh, he's back there. He's just talking his way through the crowd. It's going to be a couple of hours before you get to see the film. Yeah, it was wonderful. He's one of the great political satirists, not just of our time, but I think ever. You know, yeah, he's great.
And for you as an actor, I've seen you in so much drama. For you to do satire and tap into that other side of acting, was that something that came naturally? Or?
I mean, I started out in comedy, so classical theatre and comedy were the two things that I really started out in. So really familiar. And, you know, being on this set was like being in the green room in the National. You know, it was like a load of lovies and they were all men as well, so they're very dramatic. So, you know, it was like a lot of drama, and it was really funny.
And the character that you're playing, she really existed. So
Yeah.
what kind of backstory did you look into her?
There's actually a great book by Rosemary Sullivan called Stalin's Daughter, it's a really interesting book. It's a really interesting biography. And so I read that, and it's like a doorstop. And there's a lot of still imagery, and there's actually some interviews with Svetlana Stalin when she's old and she's living alone, sort of impoverished in a flat in Wisconsin. And that was really interesting, but trying not to jump ahead to that point in her life and just really trying to focus on the time that we were focusing on.
I would imagine when you picked up this script, you kind of forgot that you were an actor and just kind of couldn't help but laugh and really immerse yourself in it.
Well, yes. I mean, it's a very easy process, the whole thing, from when I was first asked by Armando to play Molotov, to receiving the script, to rehearsing, to putting it on film. I kept thinking at some point this is going to be an unpleasant process. It's just going to be, you know, a lot of hard work, and we're going to have to discuss this, and things will get changed, and blah blah blah, as happens very often on films. But it was actually very like Python filming. It was well prepared, and yet it appears very spontaneous, and that's the key thing. And when we rehearsed, and when we did rehearsed the scenes, we didn't over-rehearse, and Armando was always thinking about the lines and saying, I think we can get something better here, right up to the last minute, and he trusted us to do that, and that's very good. You feel very grown up about it.
Safe as well for you, just to experiment perhaps as well.
Yeah, I mean, safe in the sense that, I mean, Armando is the man who's responsible. He's the one who's going to have to take the rap for it. But he's got good judgment. He's very intelligent, and he loves comedy. It's just a fantastic combination.
And we've got characters that aren't particularly sympathetic in the film. So how was your relationship to connecting to a character that you're playing and a person that really existed?
Well, he did exist. I mean, there's not a huge we don't go into Molotov's backstory or indeed what he ended up doing, which is being a foreign minister. But it's quite a sad character in a way, because he's madly loyal to Stalin. He's really, really upset by Stalin's death. And yet, he still denounces his wife because Stalin denounced her. He's quite happy for his wife to be imprisoned. And what's going on in the mind of someone like that, who can be such a slavish devotee of a great bully like Stalin, and yet have another life as well? So I just played what was there in the script, and I like the fact that Molotov turns from someone who's a bit shattered and a bit saddened by the whole thing into someone who's gonna get the Simon Russell Beale-Berrier character and sort of do him over and all that. So it's a nice turn round. He gets
nice arc.
Very unpleasant. Nice arc, darling. I've got a lovely arc.
Well, I would imagine as soon as you got this script, it was just turning each page and just laughing your head off.
Absolutely, it was great. It was just seeing the title, Death of Stalin. You think, this is whoa. Why has nobody done this before? So it was fantastic. And it was quite interesting process meeting all the other, actors. Some of them like a very, big film actors like Steve and Andrea, Tambo. He's been around for years, and then Simon Russell Beale, of course. He can memorise about 8 Shakespeare plays at once, backwards.
I know, don't you hate people like that?
When we got to the first read through, he'd memorised the whole script. It wasn't being boastful, he'd just done it. And I do remember I did say to him, well, that's a bit stupid because he's going to rewrite it tomorrow. And of course, it was rewritten every day.
Really?
It was really, yeah. And some days we filmed a scene and then we'd film another scene a couple of days later that almost explained the previous scene. So, so it was a very it was a kind of loose process, shall we say. But I think it initially was about 3 hours, and so edited it right down and took out about 2 hours of my most glorious material. But don't worry, I'm going to use it elsewhere.
And these people are complicated. They're not particularly sympathetic. So what was it like inhabiting them?
Well, they're not particularly sympathetic, but they overthrew a regime that wasn't particularly sympathetic. And sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. They had to overthrow, the Tsarist regime, which was brutal in the extreme. So you have to fight fire with fire. So they're not shrinking violets, and nor would they be. However, the old adage, power corrupts and all power corrupts absolutely, or whatever it is, I'm sure one of the Oxbridge types will know, rings true, especially with them, because the ideals of the revolution, you can't really fault equality, you can't really, but the way in which it was realised, and then the subsequent, decline, it makes you very cynical, really, about all politics, doesn't it?
Yes, especially in these times, indeed.
Yeah, so we might as well laugh.
Or we'll cry.
Kaganovich is the guy who sort of was the power behind Khrushchev. And so when Stalin died and they were all running around like headless chickens, they were all plotting as to who was going to be. And I think at one stage he had hoped himself that he might possibly be premier, but recognised that he wasn't kind of ruthless enough. But in real life, he was a fascinating guy because he was incredibly ruthless, and he sent hundreds of thousands of people to the Gulag. But he also brought in the old age pension in Russia, and he was the guy who made sure that all the the Moscow metro was built. And he didn't die until the 1980s at the ripe old age of 92, so he did very well.
Oh, so for you then, really kind of absorbing yourself into this character, you he's kind of multi-dimensional, isn't he, really? I mean, we are all multifaceted as people, but for the atrocities that he did, it balances the fact that he did a lot of good. Does that help you as an actor kind of invest in him more?
Well, I guess it does in the way that, like, an actor's job is never to take moral stance on the character, because everybody thinks they're doing the best they're doing. I mean, it's only in retrospect and looking outside that you see he wasn't a very nice man. But, and of course, there isn't time in a movie to have all of those layers, but we did our homework, and reading about them was quite interesting. And so you brought that in the back of your head to the table, as it were.
And there is such an incredible wealth of talent here from all across the globe, isn't there? Was that a great ensemble to act against and just get in there and have fun as actors?
I cannot tell you what a fantastic job it was. Well, we used to get up every morning and kind of go, I'm going to work, and we've all remained mates ever since. There's almost like a little dining club when we go out and we eat together whenever we're in town, and it's been, I mean, this business is very peculiar in that you do so much work and you move on, but in this, and most of us have enough friends, but in this particular instance we've all remained very close, and all that started from Armando and the way he put us all together, because it's a strange bunch of people.
It really is, isn't it?
But I think it's worked rather gloriously. I mean, it's not for me to say, but it's really one of the best jobs I've ever done in my entire life.
Adapting a graphic novel, what was the initial challenge for you?
Well, the graphic novel was a great help, because you could see straight away where the comedy was, and then you could react to it. You say, "Oh, I don't think that'll work in a film," and it gives you ideas. So it was actually really reassuring, and the scaffolding there already. Some of which you could knock down, and some of which you could sort of fancify and then pretend it was your idea. So it was really good. I mean, what was great about having that graphic novel was that you knew that there was something in it. You knew that the comedy would work, and so that really helped. Yeah.
And of course, satire is the perfect platform for this story, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. I think Donald Trump has been our official publicist, because like 2 years ago when we started writing it, he was sort of a twinkle in a satirist's eye, but he wasn't. Now he's president, and it's made the film. There's so much of the film we think, oh my God, that's like, there's all these different resonances. So if he's been good for one thing, it's for promoting our film. Yes, but I think that it is a satire, but it's also a period piece, and it's also a drama, and it's above all a comedy. So there's satirical elements, but it's not as if we sat down to go, let's satirise what's going on at all.
Because you obviously want to stay true to the story that is loosely based on what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And the story itself is so dramatic, but also so absurd. There's stuff where people come up to me and say, "Oh, that's amazing how you invented that thing." Didn't invent it. It was some of the most extreme things actually happened. So, like in the there's that scene at the start where the Stalin asked the orchestra to record a piece they've just played. The conductor faints. He can't cope with the pressure. They have to get another conductor who conducts in his dressing gown. That all actually happened, and in fact in real life they had to get a third conductor because the second one was drunk. But that was too extreme, so real life was more ridiculous and comedy, if you like, than what we actually put in.
And you've also got these characters, or these people, I mean, not just characters, that are not particularly sympathetic, so how do you then write a rooting interest for the audience to have some kind of investment in these people?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the sympathy question. I think I'd be interested to see it when people see it, because you find yourself sympathising with these people, even though they are, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, am I allowed to swear? But they are the biggest shits you can imagine. They're murderous shits. And yet somehow you do sympathise with them. I think that's the strength of the movie, I hope. Even the worst one, Beria, you sort of do feel sympathy, and you. I'm not saying you relate to it, but because you don't know what it's. But you relate. You can see they're actually what they are is a bunch of lads who, instead of going on a stag weekend, decided to go on this murderous 20 years in Russia, in the Soviet.
Scary.
Yeah.
And then you've got these amazing actors that,
No, it's not. I mean, the cast is incredible. It's a bit like it's a bit like your fantasy dinner party game, and you just say, "Oh, I'll have Steve Buscemi. Oh, I'll tell you, who'd be good, Michael Palin. Oh, and I'll invite Jeffrey Tambor," and they're all there. It's fantastic.
As a producer of a film like this, I know it's based on a graphic novel as well,
Yes.
but finding out all of these facts and this wealth of information must be just fascinating for you.
Well, I think Peter and Armando and the other writing team, we did a lot of historical research, and in fact we had a kind of historical Bible which we gave to all the actors when they arrived for rehearsal, just so they could kind of get all the historical background.
And do you have to tread lightly as well as a producer, because there is a certain sensitivity obviously to the material?
I think we were all keenly aware that we were dealing with some pretty bad men in history, and and obviously they wrought untold misery across some generations, and we were very mindful of that. So,
And from misery, if you can't bring out laughter,
well,
satire is a great way to present it.
yes, I think it's about trying to look at these historical events from a different angle, and comedy allows you to do that.
It does, and I think it also opens it up to an audience that potentially wouldn't.
Hopefully, yeah, and and we'll see how it goes. But we're very proud of it, so we hope everyone enjoys it.
So, as producers of the film, adapting a graphic novel into a motion picture, was that a challenge?
Quite a challenge, especially when the graphic novel is called The Death of Stalin. But we fell in love immediately with the graphic novel, and we saw this tone, unique tone, related with the satire, and there were just one name to write and to direct the movie, and it was Armando.
Armando was the only one, who could find the right balance between comedy and drama.
Exactly, and of course, with the graphic novel being such a visual medium,
Yes.
of course. You need somebody that's able to bring the complexity with the dialogue and bring that kind of intelligence into the film as well. And he is the ideal person for that, isn't he?
The perfect one, absolutely, yes.
And then the cast. I must ask you about the cast.
It's a dream come true. What can I tell you? I mean, it's crazy to have all those people. It's amazing. And again, it's Armando was like a magnet to those actors.
I can well imagine. And is there any kind of controversy? Because obviously in Russia, I imagine this isn't probably going down too well.
For sure there is a controversy, but once again we are very happy that the Russian distributor has bought the movie and will try to release it if he's still alive, of course. And
I think they want to change the title. They want to call it the Death of Trump. I think so.
I think that's rather appropriate, isn't it?